Ladies and gentlemen, we're on day 159 of Ukraine's resistance. This is Mediacentru Ukraine. We are starting our conversation with Andrii Zakrevskyi, chair of the management board of the Ukrainian Oil and Gas Association, director general of Newfolk Oil and Gas Consultancy Center. Hello, sir. Hello. The first question is a simple one. Naftogaz's default, what does this terrifying word mean for the company, for the country, and for every Ukrainian? Well, thank you for this opportunity to speak. It's quite simple, really. We owe 300 million euro. It doesn't really matter with this rate, and we were supposed to return them a month ago. 2 weeks prior to that, the cabinet of ministers decided that we ought not to return this money, that we will need this money maybe to buy more gas, and we're at war. And they ordered, the cabinet minister ordered to the Naftogaz to restructure this debt. Our creditors were surprised at this step, and thereafter they decided that something needed to be done to see that we return the money. The cabinet of ministers was late was late with the 5 day grace period, and at the same time also ordered the Naftogaz not to pay the 300 millions as they were supposed to, with the justification or the formulation that the Naftogaz was so bad that they didn't manage to restructure this debt in the 2 weeks. Thereafter, the cabinet ministers continued to order to restructure the debt. How we're supposed to treat this, what is supposed to mean for Ukraine? Well, it depends on who you mean by Ukrainians. Are Ukrainians heroes or victims? Probably the cabinet of ministers have decided that we're victims, and Ukraine as victim, and Ukraine as from a position of victimization is much easier. It would be much easier to borrow money, so they didn't recognize, come up with a campaign to save the money to pay back the debt. And decided that this was at odds to having people provide money to Ukraine as a victim. What if we don't talk about high economics and we talk about day-to-day economics on the level of every Ukrainian? What will this mean for people? For the consumer, for people, this will mean that this default, this technical default, will not actually affect us if we save gas, if we continue to increase extraction. I wanted to say that over the past month, we've had some positive news from Naftogaz. We've had 2 new extraction sites, and another one was repaired, giving up 25,000 cubic meters of gas per day. These are millions of cubic meters of gas. For Ukrainians, probably we have to understand that Ukraine has to be the subject of any agreements, including agreements about debts. It's really quite simple. We extract gas, we save it in our gas storage facilities, and depending on how conscientious we are at saving gas and how we treat our gas, will affect not only how we will live through the fall and winter, because there is the factor of war, which we can talk about in more detail, but it will also affect what will happen in the spring, not now, but in the spring. If in the spring our gas storage facilities are empty, it's quite clear that the negotiation process with Russia, with America, with Germany will have quite a different color. But I want to warn you against a pretty simple thing, a simple warning here. I doubt that the United States, Great Britain, Canada, who are helping us and have agreed to supply gas, that they are blackmailing us, as sometimes the media try to spin it. I don't think that this default is an act of blackmail from the side of the United States or Canada for the sake of the corporate board of the Naftogaz. I don't think the cabinet of ministers shouldn't be seen as a kind of a Frodo character, trying to give Naftogaz as a gift to our partners. If they are, then all the more we have to guess our own gas and be the subject of our negotiations. You were starting talking about this. Can we talk a bit more about the preparation for the heating season for the storage facilities? What are the conditions? What are Ukrainians to expect in the winter? We have over 11 billion cubic meters of gas in our storage facilities, and with the understanding that this was given to us in the full years, and we in the good years, 9 billion cubic meters of gas were enough. But now, additionally, we're also spending gas on our on cooking, on food, on home needs. There is another problem. The problem is that even in the pre-war times, Ukraine needed 23 billion cubic meters of gas in the underground facilities to go through the heating season. What is this? Why so? The reason being is that it's the oil situation in Ukraine started with the Western Ukrainian sources. Central and Eastern Ukraine, we started drilling Central and Eastern Ukraine in the 50s, only in the 50s. And so there are fewer underground storage facilities. When Russia stopped the transit of gas, we had to spend billions of cubic meters of gas just to pump gas from our Western sites, extraction sites, to the sites in Central and Eastern Ukraine. That is why we needed the 23 billion cubic meters of gas, because in the peak, in the period of peak stress, when Ukraine needed 140, 150 million cubic meter per day, our storage facilities could only produce 70 million cubic meters, and we were getting more from extraction. So at the peak of the season, we had to do something. We had to come up with some kind of steps to add to our transportation system, gas transportation system. This happened uh, due to the transit gas transport system, which now again these are the same gas pipes. This means that there will not be the pressure of transit gas in our system this time, and we will have to pump from Western Ukrainian extraction sites into Eastern and Central regions, which is why we may have to face the fact that some gas electric stations will not be able to work. That's the situation. The Cabinet of Ministers has ordered, by the way, this is now the second attempt by the Cabinet of Ministers to negate Ukraine's accomplishments in terms of its own extraction and management of Naftogaz. Prior, the Cabinet of Ministers was saying we need 19 billion cubic meters. The cabinet, the Naftogaz said 15 was enough, but they wanted to get more. Well, how can you get what you don't have? It's very difficult again. But again, at the moment, the disaster is not the catastrophe is not the technical situation, but the war. If our gas pipes are bombed, if we're having problems with pressure, unfortunately, there will be some parts of Ukraine will not be provided with gas adequately. Considering that missiles can also strike electric substations, electric plants, this might be a problem because renewing pipes is not as difficult as renewing an electric station, which will take weeks. I don't think we will be cold. I think we'll be fine, and I think the Naftogaz will support our stations and our coal extraction industry. But will have face the electricity problem. What is the gas in Ukraine supposed to look like? Is it possible without Russia, or are we stuck with Russia? What will this war change? Thank you for this question. The oil and gas branch of Ukraine's industry is supposed to be independent. Russia or no Russia, America or no America, Canada or no Canada. The regional unions will take first place. Let's look at the crisis that we have so far overcome. We overcame it thanks to the fact that the state stopped regulating small businesses. Yes, the quality of fuel has gone down, but we're not stopping. Um, we're afraid of getting the state apparatus involved again, which led to this fuel crisis that we have at the moment. How did we get this resolved? Well, the Poles have helped us, the Lithuanians have helped us, the traders of all the world have helped us because they saw that we need fuel, and we have restructured. We have you see we're already seeing the 92 gasoline showing up. We did this with our own efforts and with the help of our neighbors and with the correct business stance. Poland now has Naftogaz related projects in western Ukraine. They're already moving some machinery to eastern Ukraine. I think that these kind of local unions, local communities, where our neighbors make us part of their energy systems, these new oil pipe systems that will provide us gas and oil, will also eventually be providing oil and gas out to ports for export. These kinds of regional unions, regional systems, and deregulation, when the state does not intervene with the business, will help us. The fuel crisis was overcome by Ukrainians, not the government, because Ukrainians are traveling on their cars and paying European prices for fuel. This crisis was overcome by Poles, Lithuanians, and other traders who trusted us and provided oil and gas products to us, and those Ukrainians who have invested in microstations. To return to the fuel crisis, we are facing August. We are facing harvest. We are facing the start of the heating season. That, of course, takes oil products. What are we to expect in the fuels market this fall? I was so impressed at how fast we managed to adapt in the overcoming the fuel crisis that I only see one problem that could again lead to problems. This is again if the state brings back regulation. If again we see taxes, and I think that the state is really itching to do that, to tax the fuel market. If we have more tests, this has to be simply set aside for the moment. The only the only answer that I see at the moment is to decentralize. The state needs to do something with timber. As you know, if the state has a monopoly on woods, on timber, and you can only buy timber according to very strict regulations. Although we say that this is done to forestall traders and hiking up prices. But the problem is that the lack of small businesses that could buy this wood from the forest and give them to individual consumers is what makes it difficult. The limitations on peat and coal in western regions stresses the oil products. If we want to overcome this crisis, and if we want to have some gas saved in our storage facilities, we have to we have to finish this decentralization. We have to take it to its logical conclusion. Irina Vereshchuk was um, quite rightly put the question of the evacuation of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions because of the fuel crisis. This is a good step. In the buildings where we won't have heating or power, electric power, you will not be able to ensure decent living conditions. If you have no power, your fridge cannot function. If you leave your house, by the way, do empty your fridges because. And then another thing is that the sewage facilities will not work. So we have to think about the following things: the places for social latrines, toilets. We have to think about heating points. Remember, we've already done this when we had the snowstorm in Kyiv, and we have to. The local authorities have to be given full freedom in terms of peat, coal, timber. We will replant those trees later. It won't be that terrible. Unfortunately, our trees are quite young after the Second World War. We won't touch the Carpathian forest, but the Sumy, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk regions, Western Ukraine, apart from the Carpathians, have to resolve the question of alternative heating sources. Thank you very much. With us was Andrii Zakrevskyi, Chair of the Board of Oil and Gas Association of Ukraine, and Director General of Newfolk Oil and Gas Consultancy Center. Our next briefing will be at 12:30. We'll be talking to Vasyl Furman, Deputy Chair of the Council of the National Bank of Ukraine. We'll be talking about the currency rates and the work of the banks.